Welcome to today's Explainer. You know, history is way more than just a dry list of dates and facts. It's a collection of some of the most gripping stories ever told. Today, we're using a true narrative style, stepping right off the pages of history and directly into the grand halls and tense courtrooms of the past. We're going to explore 5 breathtaking moments where human character was tested under unimaginable pressure. To hook you right away, picture this for a second. A condemned man is literally facing the executioner's sword. Out of nowhere, he asks for just a few hours of freedom, giving a solemn promise that he will return for his own death. I mean, would you trust him? Could anyone actually possess that level of absolute integrity? Or get a load of this unthinkable scenario. The most powerful ruler in the entire world stepping down from his royal throne just to stand as a mere equal to an everyday commoner before a judge. Throughout our journey today, we're going to unpack 5 rare historical masterpieces that show us exactly what happens when true conviction goes head-to-head with ultimate, terrifying power. Let's kick things off with Chapter 1, Loyalty Under the Sword of al-Hajjaj. We're dropping right into the middle of a totally tense, mass execution ordered by the fearsome governor al-Hajjaj. A group of rebels had been captured, and the executioner's sword was, unfortunately, already at work. By the time the call for the sunset prayer echoed, only one prisoner was left. Al-Hajjaj orders his commander, Qutayba, to hold the prisoner overnight and bring him back for execution at dawn. So this sets the stage for an agonizing night. As they're walking, the condemned man begs for just a single night of freedom to return financial deposits to their rightful owners, swearing by God's covenant to be back before sunrise. Qutayba, driven by this unexpected surge of pity, actually lets him go. But man, the moment the guy disappears into the dark, absolute panic sets in. Qutayba's family is weeping, terrified he's just signed his own death warrant. It was literally the longest night of Qutayba's life. But then, to everyone's absolute shock, as the morning call to prayer begins, there's a knock at the door. The man actually returned at dawn to face his execution. The prisoner's unwavering response just stunned everyone. When a totally bewildered Qutayba asks how he could possibly come back just to die, the man delivered this incredible line. The commander was so moved, he rushed the prisoner straight to al-Hajjaj and pleaded his case. And get this, the ruthless governor, softened by this astonishing display of honesty, actually pardoned him. But the coolest narrative twist here, the man simply looked up to the sky, thanked God, and walked away. Only days later did he return to thank Qutayba, explaining that in that miraculous moment of salvation, he just couldn't share his gratitude to the Creator with anyone else. Moving right along to Chapter 2, The Awe of a Scholar in a Ragged Shirt. Let's see how true authority is tested in the insanely opulent court of Caliph Hisham. The historical accounts here bring us face to face with a staggering clash of 2 very different worlds. Just look at this wild visual contrast. You've got the humble appearance of the great scholar Atta bin Abi Rabah riding up to the towering palace on a simple black donkey, wearing a frayed shirt and using harsh wooden stirrups. And then inside, boundless wealth, elites, and the absolute power of the caliph. Yet the moment the caliph sees this ragged scholar, he eagerly welcomes him. He even seats him so close on the royal bed that their knees literally touch, while the entire royal court just falls into a stunned, reverent silence. So Atta is seated right there on the royal throne, next to the caliph. But he doesn't use this rare position to ask for a single thing for himself. Instead, he secures rights and provisions for all factions of the empire. He demands support for Mecca and Medina. He asks for funds for the people of Hijaz and Najd. He advocates for the border guards. And powerfully, he demands fairness and reduced financial burdens for the non-Muslim citizens of the empire. And to every single demand, the caliph immediately agrees. But here's the real turning point. Atta shifts his focus right from the needs of the empire to the soul of the ruler himself, delivering this thunderous, devastating warning about facing death alone. The mighty caliph actually wept openly, and as Atta left the palace, guards literally chased after him with bags of gold. But the scholar proudly refused them, stating his reward was only from the Lord of the Worlds. History records he left without drinking a single drop of water from that palace. Wow. Okay, let's pivot to Chapter 3, The Caliph as an Opponent in the Courtroom. This one honestly reads like a legal thriller. The seemingly untouchable Caliph Hisham gets dragged into a bitter legal dispute by a man named Ibrahim bin Muhammad. When the caliph tries to just send his guard to represent him in court, the judge firmly refuses. He demands strict legal proof of representation. So the judge forces the caliph to strictly abide by the law. He makes him step down, sit as an equal on a simple mat on the floor, face his opponent, and then he actually rules against the ruler of the empire. Ibrahim, feeling totally vindicated, harshly taunts the caliph for his wrongdoing. Furious but utterly humbled by the law, Hisham ends up paying a staggering 100,000 coins just to buy his opponent's silence and preserve his reputation. Ibrahim accepted the massive sum and faithfully kept the secret until the caliph died, only revealing it later to immortalize the profound justice of that era. Now, as we hit Chapter 4, Escape from the Throne of the Caliphate, we're talking serious political suspense. We witness the incredibly tense and secret maneuvering that went down during Caliph Suleiman's final dying hours. The royal confidant Raja bin Haywa masterminds this crazy, stealthy timeline to secure a peaceful transition of power before the public even knew the caliph was dead. Realizing his own young sons were unfit to rule, the dying caliph writes a secret letter. Raja seals it and keeps the caliph's death a total secret, literally propping the man's body up with pillows. He then forces the entire court to pledge absolute blind allegiance to whoever is named in that sealed envelope. Only after securing the empire did he finally announce the death and open the decree. And this brings us to Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz. Unlike those who scheme or literally kill for worldly power, Umar had desperately begged his friend Raja earlier to spare him this terrifying burden. When the letter was finally opened and Umar's name was read aloud, he was horrified. It was a burden he ultimately could not escape. He was practically dragged to the pulpit, viewing the ultimate power of the caliphate not as a prize to be won, but as a heavy trial he was desperately trying to flee. Which brings us nicely to Chapter 5, a race against time to return grievances. Our final narrative follows Umar, who is now the caliph, as he attempts to return his massive personal estate, al-Sesla, directly to the public treasury. Before taking power, this lush estate provided abundant wealth for him and his very large family. But with the heavy crown now sitting on his head, his conscience demanded he'd give it all back. When his trusted servant warned him that returning the estate would leave his many children entirely impoverished, Umar shed tears of real fatherly concern. But then, wiping his tears, he uttered these words of absolute, unshakable faith. He knew that true provision comes from above, not from land or royal titles. So the servant panics and runs to Umar's young son, hoping the kid will talk some sense into his dad. But, wow, the apple really doesn't fall far from the tree here. The son furiously forces his way into his father's only hour of rest during the blistering midday heat, urging him to execute this righteous decision immediately. The exhausted caliph agrees, saying he'd sleep for just a moment and return the wealth right after the noon prayer. But then his son drops this profound, piercing question. That chilling realization that death could strike before noon, leaving his intentions completely unfulfilled, it hits the caliph like a lightning bolt. Prompted by his own son's unyielding moral compass, the exhausted caliph immediately marches right to the pulpit, totally skipping his rest, and officially returns the immense wealth to the public treasury. So what does this all mean for us? Well, to wrap up with our conclusion, lessons for our time. These 5 dramatic historical chapters aren't just dusty ancient trivia. They're timeless mirrors reflecting the eternal struggle for human integrity and moral courage. Through this narrative journey, we've witnessed individuals who treated power as an awesome responsibility rather than a personal playground. We've seen loyalty in the face of death, scholars who couldn't be bought, rulers submitting to the law, and leaders running away from the very throne others would gladly kill for. I'm leaving you with this final, pretty provocative thought today. Ask yourself, how do you manage the power, the privileges, and the responsibilities in your own modern life? Because ultimately, the true measure of our character isn't found in what we can acquire or control, but in what we have the courage to give back when the clock is ticking. Thank you so much for joining me today on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.